David Clendon.
What my colleague Mortimer Davidson has already said in respect to this bill, the Greens are supporting it. I think repetition is no bad thing. From my teaching days, I know that some students are slower than others to absorb information, and while some of our friends on the national benches are charming people, they might be in that category on occasion that take a little longer than others to understand evidence. Technology is a wonderful thing, as we know. This is an instance, I think, where legislation is to some extent catching up with technology. The electronic monitoring tools we have are exactly that, they are tools. The Greens are supporting this bill because it does gives another option to parole boards, to sentencing justices, to people making decisions about bail, and indeed often it may be the case that electronic monitoring enables a person to not undergo a custodial or a further custodial sentence. So in that sense, it makes sense to use technology in this way. But we ought not to confuse this management tool with a long-term solution, because that it is not. And that point was made very strongly by Kim Workman in his, as ever, reliably excellent submission. And may I just divert for a moment to acknowledge and put on the record in this House the Greens Party's congratulations to Mr Workman on the award of an honorary doctorate recently. That's something that I'm sure even those who might disagree on occasion with Mr Workman would acknowledge as a well-deserved honour and one he merits very strongly. So, sir, the point is made that while this is a management tool, it is not a long-term solution to offending. I'm very reluctant to politicise a tragedy, but the sad and tragic business of Blessy Katingo's very preventable death has been raised in this debate. Sir, I'd make the point that the person who perpetrated that wretched crime had been monitored. I also make the point that he was 8 years in custody. For 8 years, his every movement was controlled by the state. In that 8 years, we're given to understand that he had 7 sessions of psychological counselling. At the completion of those 7 sessions, the psychiatrist said he ought to be given time to reflect, to demonstrate that he had absorbed something, that his behaviour was moving, and then a more intensive program of counselling of whatever it took to change that man's attitude, to change his thinking, to change his perception, could be undertaken. That follow-up never occurred, and I think all of us collectively need to take responsibility for that. That is a clear and obvious failing of the in-prison rehabilitation. If such a serious high-risk offender is not getting adequate or even not even barely adequate attention while he is serving that long 8-year sentence, then we need to look very hard at what's happening inside our prisons. We can't simply point the finger and say, well, the bracelet should have been the solution. It clearly was not, and it cannot be in any case. Sir, the bill makes some useful contributions, as I've said. One of the I sat on the Select Committee. One of the decisions or the findings of the Select Committee was to insert a statement of purpose into this bill, so it was very clear what the point of it was. It's an obvious thing to do, but it's something we saw was lacking in the bill as it was originally drafted, so that was put in there. It enables, as I said, decisions to be made that, for example, inmates might be allowed to be released from prison, be it for humanitarian reasons, to attend funeral or important family functions, or importantly for release to work. And unfortunately, one of the overreactions to the case of Philip Smith's unauthorised expedition to South America was that work to release has almost ceased, despite the incredible value to the offenders, the very observable and observed improvement in behaviours and the likelihood of their not reoffending. Work to release was a very successful program that has been that has been largely abandoned by corrections, or at least a much higher bar is set. And that's unfortunate. I think we need to, if need be, use the electronic monitoring to enable a return to a much more widespread use of the release to work programs, because they are a means of reintegrating people, to give them just a little bit of freedom, a little bit of opportunity to earn the trust of the community and to make some useful contribution while they're doing that. If technology can assist that, that's a good thing. The Greens will support it. Kia ora.